to introduce our guest author, Jan Baer. Let me tell, well, no, you gotta hear all the good stuff about you first. Using poetic prose and dark humor, Jan Baer's novels create immersive worlds that challenge the boundaries of reality. Her works explore human nature with philosophical depth. Dreaming Wakes the Fool examines characters wrestling with delusion and desire, while The Preacher Goes to Babylon follows a flawed preacher navigating faith, redemption, and moral ambiguity in a chaotic landscape. Both novels pair rich storytelling with sharp social commentary. A distinctive voice in contemporary literature, Baer defies conventional storytelling with introspective themes and vivid characters. Her narratives prompt readers to engage with questions of identity, belief, and human nature. Whether portraying personal struggles or broader existential dilemmas, her work remains compelling and evocative, establishing her as a writer who pushes the boundaries of literary fiction. She will read from her new work, The Queen in Mourning, which takes place in the world of her novel, Dreaming Wakes the Fool. Let's get started.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
A little quiet.
Somewhat. It needs to be up a little bit louder. Yeah.
Can we just,
Now?
it's at the top.
Is this okay?
Okay, then let's get you close.
Okay.
It should be like just
All right.
4
Is this
inches.
better?
Yeah.
Okay. The character in this novel is the wife of a character who is killed at the end of Dreaming Wakes the Fool, which is a spoiler, so forget it. So it should be more or less standalone. On March 25th, 2020, Julia Burrows pushed her cart out of the grocery store and through the empty parking lot to her mother's well-used Mercedes. Hardly anyone had been inside the store and no one out here. Bustling Chicago, down with the flu, gave her an ominous sense that something was coming, like the calm before the tornado. She shivered, deeper than the chilly day would require, opened the trunk, and started loading the groceries into it. As she set the last bag in place, a shopping cart rattled behind her. She glanced back, then looked again. An old woman pushed the cart in her direction. Dirty and disheveled, she wore an incandescent scowl and a ratty old coat of purple velvet. Items clattered in the cart's wire basket, a battered broadsword, lengths of chain, a bicycle's handlebars, several unmatched high-heeled shoes, their jewel colors scratched and worn, and a dull silverish scepter that must have come from a theater prop room's rummage sale. The woman's expression of pent-up rage frightened Julia as she slammed the trunk shut, shoved her cart aside, and quickly got into the car, locking its doors. She turned the key, and the engine roared into life. She twisted in the seat, watching behind her as the car slowly rolled backward. The woman rammed her cart into the back end of the Mercedes with a rattling crash. She took up the scepter and held it out toward Julia, not like a weapon exactly, but more like a pointer. "Stop!" she shouted. "King Quigley needs you. The kingdom is in danger." Julia slammed on the brakes, her heart pounding as she gripped the steering wheel. She put the car into park and stepped out to face the woman. "What did you say?" she shouted at the woman. How could she mention Quig's name? Not only how could she, but how dare she? Julia's anger rose, overwhelming the emotional stew that gripped her most of the time. Sadness, longing, anxiety, and the others. But, yes, rage, because death was the most infuriating betrayal of all. "What do you mean, King Quigley? What kingdom are you talking about?" Her breath came fast and ragged. "She's crazy," she said to herself. "She can't know Quig. It's a coincidence." The woman stared at her, her ice blue eyes promising depths of secret knowledge, but she didn't answer. Instead, she shook her head in frustration. "You're worthless," she said. "You'll get me killed." And she pushed the cart through the parking lot toward the street. Still shaking in raging terror, Julia watched the purple coat shrink in the distance. There was a new scratch in the dark blue paint of the car's trunk. She could only hope her mother wouldn't notice. She climbed back into the car and returned to her parents' home. Julia parked the car on the side street nearest the kitchen door. As she struggled with the door, her arms loaded with 3 bags of groceries, her parents' voices rose in dispute from deeper within the house. Her father shouted, "It's our home!" She had no context, but she worried he was talking about her. She had come here with her 2 teenage children for a change of circumstance. Her temporary stay had stretched into 6 months without finding a place she could afford. Were her parents losing patience? How would they feel when they found out she had been laid off from her remote job? She shoved the door with her hip, causing it to bang against the stove. Her mother's voice preceded her into the kitchen, exhibiting maternal concern. "Is that you, dear?" Then she said something to her husband, dangerous in tone, but the words inaudible. "Yes," Julia said, "just bringing in the groceries." Her mother entered the kitchen, her expression smooth. "Oh, good. Is there something that can be cooked quickly? We're having a guest for dinner." Julia stared at her mother. "A guest? What about the rule against gatherings? The pandemic?" "Don't be silly," her mother said. "We can have a guest if we need to. He's just come to the city and doesn't have any place else to stay. He'll get an apartment as soon as things open up." Julia set the bags on the counter and went back to the car. Stay? Her father went out with her to help get the rest of the bags. "What's going on?" she asked him. He rolled his eyes and shrugged. "You know your mother." She did know her mother, but it wasn't much of an answer. She dropped the subject for now. Returning inside, she pulled a jar of spaghetti sauce from one of the bags and set it on the counter. She said to her mother, "Spaghetti? I've got everything to make it, and it's fast." "That will be fine," her mother said. "Arthur, will you bring something nice from the wine rack? Maybe a bottle of that Barolo we brought back from Italy last year." He set the groceries on the counter and went to do as he was bidden. "What's this all about, Mom?" "I told you, it's a young man in a difficult situation. He'll stay in the basement apartment." "A stranger?" She shook her head with an odd smile. "Never a stranger." She seemed to disappear into an inner realm for a moment. "You'll meet him tonight." She looked around the kitchen. "You'll make dinner?" Although her voice went up at the end of the sentence, it wasn't a question. "I'll do that," Julia said, "but first I'll go say hello to Nick and Lily." "Of course, dear," her mother said, stretching her neck to receive a kiss on the cheek. Julia left her mother and the groceries and went to greet her children. She knocked lightly on the door to 14-year-old Nick's room and walked in. He was sitting at his desk, a computer screen before him. His hand quickly moved the mouse before he looked up at her with a greeting smile, not entirely warm, but not cold either. "You finished your lessons?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. He sighed. It was like middle school. "How's work?" "My boss canceled the Zoom meeting." She didn't want to tell him or anyone else that she had lost her job. Not just yet. Not before she had time to come up with another plan. She shrugged. "So I went out for groceries." She looked at her boy. So old and so young, so full of surprises. "It's going to be all right, you know." She wished she believed it herself. "I was just starting to get to know people, and now I wish we were back in Portland." "I understand. It's just a couple of weeks, they say." She sighed. "Things will get back to normal." "How serious is the pandemic if Grandma Roz is bringing a guest to dinner?" Julia shrugged. "She said he needs a place to stay." "Did she say he's a creep?" "You've met him?" "He dropped by this afternoon. Grandpa Art was out somewhere, and Grandma Roz introduced him to Lily and me. I think he's bringing his stuff back tonight." "That's fast," Julia said. "Why do you say he's a creep?" "Something. I don't know. Wait till you see him." He stopped, looking at her intently. "I think he's..." But he didn't finish his thought. She waited. "You think he's what?" He shook his head. "You don't want to hear it." "Of course I want to hear it. The worse it is, the more I want to know." His mouth pursed, then he blurted it out. "I think he's Egum Crad." Julia felt as though her feet fell through a hole in the floor. "Egum Crad? What do you know about Egum Crad?" "I know one killed my dad," he said, a trace of defiance in his voice. "Your dad died of a silent myocardial infarction." The medical term was comforting. It meant other people die suddenly with no symptoms and no warning, not just her husband. But now Julia felt the pitch in her voice rising. "Who told you he was killed by Egum Crad?" She shook her head. "Never mind, I know who told you that." Uncle Gray, her words caught in her throat, "who is not your uncle, is the one who got him killed if you're going to blame anyone." But, did Gray give you a mirror? Nick squirmed. Don't lie to me, you're better than that. He took a deep breath and let it out. Yes, but did you use it? No, I wouldn't. His voice pitched upward in protest. Gray told me not to until I'm an adult. And I told you never. Why do you think we moved here? Atelier is not confined to Portland. We're not discussing the geography of Atelier. She stretched out her hand to it, flicking her fingers toward her palm. Give me the mirror. He didn't answer, but his gaze slipped toward a box on the shelf across the room. Julie went over and opened the box, below postcards and keepsakes with a flat, leather-wrapped object. When she opened it, the item glinted in reflected light. She gingerly took it in hand, closing the leather cover. Don't take it, Nick said, his voice cracking. It's from my dad. Her heart ached at the desperation in his face. She reviewed her options. Her first choice would be to break it into 1,000 pieces, but that would only open 1,000 portals into the world she wanted to forget existed. Keeping it here, even carefully hidden, would be like keeping a snake in a skirt pocket. There was one way to protect her son and keep the Roram safe from others. I won't destroy it. I'll send it back to Gray for safekeeping. When you're an adult, she shivered, you can get it back from him. Maybe by then you'll understand why you're better off leaving it alone. She took it into her room and put it into a box of keepsakes on her own shelf. Then she went to say hello to Lily. Lily, 13, lay prone on her bed watching a video on her iPad, her feet kicking the air. Julia sat beside her and placed her hand on her back. Did you do your lessons? Lily answered without looking at her. Boring. What are you watching? A video. What of? Now Lily turned to her mother with a look of such scorn that Julia inwardly apologized to her own mother for the time she had given that very look. The girl's soft, full lips wore black lipstick. Grandma Roz would not approve. Julia inhaled deeply and decided now was not the time to address it. Ariana Grande, Lily said. Nick told me about the guy who's coming to stay here. Back to the iPad. No answer. Did you meet him? Yeah, dank. Julia took in a deep breath and let it out slowly. Your brother didn't like him. Okay. She spoke as if her brother's opinion didn't mean much to her, and she still didn't look at her mother. Would you turn that thing off and talk to me? Julia said, her voice rising in spite of herself. I've got to go make dinner in a few minutes. Lily closed the cover of the iPad and rolled over to look at her mom. I'm sorry to take up so much of your valuable time, but I'm not asking you to sit here. I just want to know what's going on with you, Julia said, her voice pleading. If you wanted to know what's going on with you, you might have asked before we moved here. I may have to be here, but I don't have to like it. The move, Julia said, I told you. Yes, you always told me. You never listened. Well, here we are doing what you want. What else is there to say? Julia sighed and left the room. She told herself Lily would be fine once she got accustomed to her new home, but she was beginning to wonder if being here was better than Portland. At least there she would have a job, and Roz and Art weren't quite the support she had hoped for. The last thing Julia did before going downstairs was to nestle the mirror in bubble wrap, pack it into a small box, and wrap it in brown paper with a note for Gray specifying her expectations for Nick's freedom from Atelier and everything it entailed. It was not a friendly note.
There'll be a brief pause.